Setting a boundary is about when you're in a relationship and you hit a crossroad that something needs to change and the other person's not doing their part. What are you going to do about it? It's such an important concept to take through your life. You can learn it today, and then you're going to practice applying it every day. And eventually you can get good at it. It's saying, I have a need here that's not being met, and there's something different that I can do, that I can control, regardless of what someone else is doing in my relationship. This could show up in parenting, in a school setting, at work, at home. And typically your issue with boundaries, with getting what you need, making sure that you get what you need, it shows up the same in all areas of your life. It can show up with your parenting, your performance at work, intimacy, relationships, friendships, the way you interact with people. So do you overfunction for others? Or are you one that depends on others and sort of fails to respect the boundaries of others? Do you fail to set boundaries, or do you fail to respect boundaries? That's a question I want you to ask. Some signs that you might need to be saying, I need a boundary. Some signs are resentment towards someone, blaming them, snapping off on people, gossip. If you're suppressing an emotion, if you're avoiding saying something that needs to be said. Again, resentment is a huge one, and that's one that shows up when we realize that we need something and we're not getting it. And the other one that I thought of was manipulation. Do you ever find yourself trying to control a situation because the other person's not going to do what you want? And so if you can trick them or say something a little different or be extra sweet, then they might be there. Or if you just remind somebody the fifth time, they might be there. We can find ourselves often as parents threatening, hovering, trying to change the situation by controlling, taking something away. These are all examples of where we might lack clear boundaries, clear limits that can avoid the arguing and the yelling and the manipulating and the controlling and the avoidance and the resentment. All of that can go away if you can just set a clear boundary that says, this is what I want, and if you're not going to do your part, this is what I'm going to do to get my needs met. So the steps of setting a boundary are: 1, know your ask. Say your ask. 2, make a decision on what you're going to do different with what you can control. And 3, follow up. Can't forget that one. You'll have to have support around you if it's necessary to make sure that you follow up on a boundary that you've set. And just a quick review, how do we know what our ask is? Our spirit is the deepest part of us that can feel content, at peace, calm, and that's where our wishes and our desires and our hopes live. So that's what we want to tend to for our overall fulfillment in relationships and in life. That's what's going to affect your quality of life. While emotions flare up when our spirit has an unmet need. So quickly the needs are comfort, safety, forgiveness, acceptance. So that would also be assurance, acceptance, connection, and validation, to be understood. So the emotions that will flare up when those needs aren't being met is anger shows up when we need to be better understood, when we need change. Fear shows up when we're feeling insecure or unsafe. Sadness shows up when we're needing comfort. Happiness shows up when we're needing connection and to share something. And shame shows up when we're feeling bad about ourselves and we need acceptance, or if we're feeling guilty and we need forgiveness. So that's how you do step 1. You determine your ask by thinking through which emotion is on my mind, which emotion is guiding my thoughts and behavior in a way that I don't like, and what is the need. So you can review that, rewind that, review back on our other videos on how to get an emotional need met, and that's your ask. Step 2, what decision do you need to make to get that change in a relationship? So some examples are to withdraw engagement with somebody who's not treating you right, to change the way that you'll be vulnerable and intimate with a partner or a child or a friend if they're treating you a certain way. Trust, you might not be willing to trust someone anymore if they've betrayed you enough times. Let's see what else. Overfunctioning. A lot of times we overfunction by serving and saying yes and yes and yes and yes, I'll do all these things, and then we're resentful that the other person's not doing their part. So you might pull back your willingness to do certain tasks or the amount of tasks that you're willing to do for somebody, or the order of which you'll do them. If you do your part, then I'll do mine. Let's see what else. Oh, space. Space is a big one. A lot of times we can say, I don't like the way I'm being spoken to, so I'm going to get space. Or I'm not in a good place right now in my life, I need space. It's not always an offensive behavior, but sometimes even if you're feeling annoyed, we can get space. We can step back from an energy that we're not okay with being around. So a lot of times we make an ask and the person either says they're not going to give it to us. That can be forgiveness or, again, change, or that they're going to listen or comfort or spend time with us or be somewhere when they said they'd be somewhere, or follow through with something that we've told them to do, like with a child. If they're not going to do their part, what are you going to do to make sure that you're getting taken care of? So I want to go ahead and just do an example with a teenager. If you've asked them to clean up their room or to put the dishes away a certain amount of times, and yet you're allowing them to leave the table and go sit on their phone for an hour, I'm not sure if you're holding your boundary of what you're willing to do. A phone is a privilege. Or how many times you think that you have to ask them for them to do it. So a boundary might be, I'm going to put it on this chart and I'll warn you if you forget, but that's it. And if you don't do your chores around the house, then you don't get to have the privilege of having a phone when you're home. You do responsibilities and then you get the privilege. In a relationship, you might say, I know that you're involved with other women and we're dating, and I'm not willing to be a part of this relationship when you're talking to other women. So call me when you're ready to just date me. That's what I'm willing to do. Instead of hounding and obsessing and checking the person's phone, once you have evidence that the person is not doing what you're asking, whether it's overtly or covertly, that they're just not doing it and they say they are, that's where you make the change that you can make. And often this means a separation of a relationship, or even within a marriage or a committed relationship, even with a boss, it might mean I need to take a break. This is not okay the way it is. I'm not willing to work the role of 3 people for the pay of 1. And I will step back or I will change jobs if this is going to continue this way. So this is where you get to take power of what you can control. And so there's another lesson on this more deep about the extremes of boundary issues. And we find this on the codependency scale, where there's many people who depend and take from others and fail to meet their own responsibilities. And then they often are attracted to the person who's the codependent, that lives to take care of others more than themselves. And so I want you to just think about if you could be on that scale of extreme. Are you the codependent that takes care of everyone but yourself? Do you attract people in your life who use you and abuse you? Do you need to say no more? So I wanted to just put that teaser out there. If those words stand out to you, then you might have a greater problem at hand where you might need extra support to get your boundaries put in place. And then another lesson we can talk about is where we learn to do life this way and how we've developed these issues. And that's where you can get underneath the nitty-gritty of this natural instinct to just lay back and let people walk all over you. Life is not meant to be walking on eggshells. So I want to encourage you that you can have peace. You can be untouchable in a relationship, or you can sever a relationship if it's not healthy for you. And so if you're stuck at this job, or you're committed in this relationship with somebody and it is your child, it's always going to be your child, you can't control what somebody else does. And the manipulating and the threatening and the hovering and all that isn't going to do it. It's just going to damage the relationship. But what you can do is control what you're willing to do. So I want to challenge you to do that, and I'm going to wish you good luck.